Brownies and Bobkins to Ignore the Bird, Follow the River, a podcast where nerds and creatives talk about Willow the movie in anticipation for the upcoming Disney Plus series. I'm Zach, game master and artist at nerdcrafty.com, and today I'm joined by my fellow Willow enthusiasts, Weston and Adam. Weston, how you doing?
Hey, doing great, buddy. I'm glad to be talking about these wonderful characters. I love comedic relief duos, especially. It's some of my favorite archetypes, out there. Adam, what's up? What's new?
Oh, not much. I'm just excited to be here tonight, talking about the Brownies and Cherlindrea and the greater world of magic. Not just magic being the magic in the world of Willow, but like how do they create those images and make things look like magic? The special effects of everything.
That's right. We are in the middle of our World of Willow discussions, our character deep dives. So tonight we are talking about the Fairy Queen, Cherlindrea, and the Brownies. And I've got a monster stat block for the Brownies, and I've got some Dungeon Master tips on how to run Cherlindrea and the Brownies in your own Dungeons and Dragons campaign. But we'll be getting to that in a bit. Before we get to those things, Adam, what have you got prepared for us?
So far I've done a little bit of research on all the subject matter, but I did do some Hero Forge models that look pretty sweet of Franjean and Rool and Cherlindrea. And you can find those on the Discord. If you want to check those out, I believe it's free, and just click on the link and it can become yours. You can have some fun with it. You can even modify it yourself if you want to. But I did do like some special things with Cherlindrea. I did a lot of transparency with her character model, and hopefully one of these days I'm going to order one of those models fully painted and everything and see just how awesome it looks. But Franjean looks pretty cool. And then with Rool, I did Rool with his mouse helmet, and then also balding Rool without his mouse helmet, which is pretty fun.
Yeah, and if you guys, if you're listening and you want to look at those, you can jump on nerdcrafty.com. And we've got all the different hero tokens we've done for our character dives, so you'll be able to see those there. Weston, what do you have prepared that people can look at?
Well, I actually, so when I started doing before we started doing this series, I had started doing a bunch of portraits, and one of the last ones I did before we actually started recording was Franjean and Rool, and I did it in these really wild colors to kind of like try and capture their chaotic, mischievous energy. And then, after we kind of game planned a little bit last night, I sat there thinking about we're talking about Cherlindrea as well. I definitely want to try and depict her, but I mean, any existing image of her is kind of just like, here is a blur of light. Try and draw this. Weston taunting me. So honestly, at our lovely producer Sam's suggestion, I was told to try and look up some promo art, and finally found one that was just like, I don't even think it's an image from the film itself, but it's this wonderful kind of very contrasty, like light and darkness kind of thing with just Cherlindrea and Willow, which will make this, I think, my third Willow portrait that I've done. Or this one's fairly simple compared to the others, but I've done 2 drawings for this episode. But we're talking about some very important characters here. I mean, without the 3 characters we're discussing tonight, literally, the story would not happen. Mad Mardigan may have just wandered off with Laura Dannon, and we would have never heard or seen from either of them again.
God, that would have been crazy. Can you imagine that?
Oh yeah, I mean we almost talked about it a little bit in the Madmartigan episode, just because like I brought up the fact that Madmartigan loses Elora Danan, and of course blames himself so much for it, but it happens almost completely outside of his own control. By I believe it's Franjean's own admission, they stole him while he was taking a pee-pee. They stole Elora Danan rather, while Madmartigan was taking a pee-pee.
That's
so.
He could have been her
taking a pee-pee.
He could have been her foster father.
Yeah, it could have been a really different story. I mean, honestly, but who knows how much would have changed? I mean, I don't know. I have this theory that obviously we discussed in that episode a little bit as well, but I do think that like there were a certain, I mean, with Cherlindrea's power and it essentially being so great, it would have been only a matter of time, hopefully, before her intervention would have caught up with Elora Danan and Madmartigan. The story would have happened slightly differently. Maybe Willow not even being a part of that. Willow and Migosh get to go home and live in, relative bliss, and maybe you're never even made aware of the fact that, the whole world around them could have potentially totally ended.
Yeah, that's crazy.
The Rool and Franjean movie.
Hey, that's an interesting one. I mean, Franjean and Rool. I mean, that would have been like total rogue mission status, where they were told by Cherlindrea to like go take care of this, and instead of like going and getting the baby from Madmartigan, they're just like, what if we just took off and raised this baby as our own? Like, there are brownie clans throughout Motherworld. In a little bit of digging I was doing for this episode, I realized that they're not like native solely to Cherlindrea's Grove. They exist in the greater world around Willow and Madmartigan, and you can tell because everyone seems to know a brownie when they see them. They're not surprised that it exists. They're a little bit shocked, and frankly, it sounds like most of the time a little bit feared, giving us a little bit. If you listen to the tone of the voice, every time someone unaffiliated with the party, our main cast, they're shrieking, "Brownie! I hate brownies!"
Yeah, they think of brownies. They're basically like rats and mice.
Yes.
But and that doesn't surprise me, like that they have maybe done that before, because it doesn't stray too far from the wee folk of Ireland, where basically they would, if you weren't good or if you didn't watch yourself, they would steal your baby and replace it with a changeling and raise the baby in the Fey world with themselves and do whatever, who knows what they did with those human babies that they raised in the Fey realm.
Yeah, it's really interesting that, because like that Gaelic Celtic mythology, I hadn't actually ran into a lot of like leprechaun or wee folk kind of stuff. But what is interesting is how it's all this very shared kind of lineage, like, and not even just in Gaelic and Celtic lore. It goes even further into like Germanic and Nordic or Scandinavian.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The Brownies, by dozens of different names, kind of different versions of them populate all kinds of folklore. Whether you're talking about a goblin or a leprechaun or elves in some contexts. But what's really interesting is that brownies are more of what we're seeing in the film, what we're seeing in most of the interpretations where we are thinking of brownies, like the borrowers.
Right, yeah, totally.
These are, I mean, you want to get into some rocky territory, guys. Oh my God. Doing research on the brownies was really interesting because typically, in a little bit more of a similarity to honestly anything, it's a lot like J.K. Rowling's house elves, where they're bound to a domestic kind of service. They're not supposed to be seen or heard. they're reportedly supposed to be able to go invisible, but a lot of the time they were used for class aggression between the people who worked as laborers in the home and people who owned the home and had these servants, essentially. So there was different things like in the night, if your servant wasn't working hard enough, sometimes they would get pinched in the night by the Brownies to try and
Yep.
improve their work pace. But there were things like you couldn't leave things. What was it like? Like the house elves, you couldn't give them articles of clothing, or they would never come back. You couldn't give them names, or they would. You couldn't pay them in any way.
Yeah, you couldn't give them clothing.
Exactly. So, like I was saying, a little bit, quite a bit like Rowling's house elves. And
Yep.
yeah, I just thought that was really interesting. Not to mention they're called brownies because typically in the most traditional elements of the folklore, they're literally brown skinned.
Right. Yeah.
So there's some really interesting um, like ultimately social commentary written right into like how these brownies were portrayed so differently in the way that Lucas did it with the brownie community that we are introduced to within Willow.
Right.
He ended up styling them by and large in a kind of like pulpy kind of way, but in like certain proto-Celtic or Gaelic tribes people like the Picts. Like almost like you would have heard Robert E. Howard depicting Picts in an old Conan book or something like that.
Yeah. They didn't have they definitely didn't have blackface, but they definitely did have spray tans or makeup there close to that.
Yeah, and it was definitely like this like it wasn't a unnatural shade for these fairly white dudes in Kevin Pollak
Right.
and Rick Overton. It was just like they
Yeah.
looked a lot more like they spent a lot of time outside and covered themselves in dirt regularly.
Yep.
That was kind
Yeah,
of the
totally.
general tone. And because the brownies were burrowers in Motherworld, that makes a lot of sense. They would have their little domiciles essentially set up in burrows so that they would be covered in dirt. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I just think it's interesting in a lot of ways how this movie kind of defies a lot of traditional depictions that like I don't know if it was consideration or simple happenstance that they ended up dodging a lot of like very troubling things that you could see kind of reading it from a modern perspective, and how you could have gone very, very wrong with those depictions.
Right.
Yeah, so it's interesting to think about that team and how they may have been approaching these kinds of characters, and I hope it's a genuinely like considerate, sensitive way, which is ultimately what we're getting, regardless of their intention, anyway.
Yeah, I feel like it totally is.
I mean, death of the author and all that intention isn't necessarily all that important. What we, the audience, take away from it is really
Right.
important. And Franjean Rool, I always thought of them kind of like this movie's 3PO and R2. You know,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
they're like the comedic duo. Of course, they have a little bit more for the audience to chew on as far as their dialogue goes, but
Right.
just a little bit. I mean, 3PO talked enough for both of those two, but.
Truth.
But I did like their dynamic a lot. It was very kind of like classic comedy. You have your funny guy and then your guy who has no idea how funny he is because he's the straight man.
Yep.
And I thought that God, I think Kevin Pollak's portrayal of that character of Rool is so just joyful, like the whole way through. Like you can tell that guy is just having a absolute blast with that character every time they're rolling, and like
Oh yeah.
he's separate from everybody other than Rick Overton. I think they did shoot most of their stuff on blue screen together, and they also used some like extra large, or what's the word where they make the set pieces and props very large.
Forced perspective. And forced perspective, and then like bigatures and miniatures.
Yeah, bigatures, is that okay? Because I was going to say that, and I was like, it can't be the word I use.
Back in the day, they didn't have terms like that, but the Weta Workshop, they started coining those terms as like bigatures and miniatures, because they did a lot of that, like the really large set pieces to make people look small, the medium ones, and then the very small, so that they could film like sweeping shots to sort of make it look like it was a giant landscape and things like that. So
I love it.
I really liked hearing the origin story of the changeling being replacing the baby, because now I have a changeling character I can create where he or she grows up in a family and the baby has been stolen, and you've got your personal quest to find the family's baby.
Yeah.
Which is probably,
man, that's classic.
Which has probably been taken to the Feywild. So there's your Feywild Dungeons and Dragons campaign set up for your changeling character.
There's a lot of different franchises that do that too. Like, not to get off on a sidetrack, but one of them is the Magicians. In later books and seasons, they talk about that with the fairies and stuff.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the way that I was kind of introduced to this whole tradition of lore of the changeling and all that stuff is actually magic cards.
Okay.
The changeling creature types, and you get a little bit of like flavor text stuff just to get you kind of like get your imagination working, and then you open up Wikipedia and suddenly you've spent an hour reading about changelings.
Right. Yeah.
But another really interesting one, if you haven't seen it, I normally wouldn't. I mean, the director is fairly controversial. Clint Eastwood made The Changeling. Actually, I can't remember, but that's one of Angelina Jolie's all-time greatest film performances.
Right.
In my opinion. I mean, she's incredible in that. That movie's... I wouldn't normally recommend a Clint Eastwood movie, but man, that's... Yeah. Easily his best modern work. Anyway, but we were talking a little bit about how the effects were done and the bigatures, and I just love that terminology. And I came upon some behind the scenes photos of them like in like the back of the oversized carriage set. So you have Franjean Rool in this, this crazy large version of the same the back of the cart that they're chasing down the road.
Mm-hmm.
I just love that, man. I love the imagery of it. I love the idea of it. It's just like, and I just love that so much of this is like, I mean, of course it is. It's in camera work and stuff like that, because some of the first computer generated images were done in this film with the
right. And interesting, like along those same lines, like it's the fact that Disney is doing the Willow series now is actually almost like coming home, because I was watching a little show on the making of Darby O'Gill and the Little People, just to sort of get an idea of like what those special effects were that were out there at the time and all that sort of stuff. And they basically, that Lucas and his team took a lot from Disney, and that was in Darby O'Gill and the Little People. They used forced perspective, they used the bigatures, they used all of those techniques and things like that. Rotoscoping, like everything, like, so that was out there. What is that, like 1952? Something like it. That was a long, that was early. And that sort of inspired Lucas to do the things that he was doing and so on and so forth. And then now it's all coming full circle, coming back to Disney and whatnot, which is interesting.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the influence in a lot of like effects-driven films that were pushing the boundaries way before anyone was ready to. Are really apparent in Lucas's work, from like George Méliès to oh man, Ray Harryhausen.
Mm-hmm.
And like all those really wonderful, the way that the stop motion that he would do, and how just like at the time there really wasn't too much better, man. I mean, those Sinbad movies, I still stand for Sinbad.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's this wonderful lineage of films that really push those like boundaries, and
Well, like
George Lucas is definitely a student of that
absolutely.
style of pulpy genre filmmaking, and
Sinbad, Clash of the Titans, all that stuff. Yeah.
absolutely, man.
I do like that they used the miniatures for the brownies. I think those are the scenes that sell the best, and some of the rotoscoping has fallen victim to time, so to speak, and the bigatures, all the old fashioned techniques. Those are actually the ones that still work the best, and through Lord of the Rings and hopefully the upcoming TV show, they'll still use those forced perspectives and bigatures, etc.
Oh yeah. And you see not just those shows, but like any number of shows nowadays using those old school practical effects, The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, like any number of the Marvel universe stuff, even The Expanse and shows like Wheel of Time, they're all using those old and they, like, I've seen interviews, they're all the directors are talking about they're trying to use as many practical effects as possible and then fine tuning them with CGI stuff, which is pretty cool because it makes it real. It takes away what's that, the uncanny valley, is that what it's called?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, even like I think one of the best movies to ever. Well, I want to stick to the topic, but yeah,
Right.
I do really like that ambition that brings us these big worlds, that brings us these large like ideas into a space where we can all share them. It's like really the magic of genre filmmaking, and that's what I love about Willow so much. I mean, especially during the last couple of years, I can't tell you how many times I watched Willow, just because that kind of escapism, that kind of just being able to inhabit somewhere that's so realized is something that I desperately need when I'm stressed out.
Totally.
There's certain. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I really hope that, and I think this is kind of along the subject line of magic in the world and whatnot, but I hope that at some point in the new series, they have some Rottweilers with fucking rubber masks and like fucking woolen sheep, whatever, tied around them, but finessed with a little bit of CGI and stuff, just enough so that they have that nostalgic feel of the death dogs and whatnot.
Dude, well,
the long rat tail.
Yeah.
Well, then I want a little bit. Oh, I want a little bit of animatronic as well, then, because those were some of the most sophisticated animatronics of their time. The ones that they shot for the Devil Dogs or Death Dogs. Yeah. Yeah, but I do love those effects. I mean, especially the rubber masks on the Rottweilers work so goddamn well.
Right. It was strange because like I think we were talking the other night about the fact that like those dogs, like as a kid, like they were one of the scariest things, but as an adult I was like, wow, they don't look that big, but then it turns out they're like, I mean, they're actual Rottweilers, so they're pretty big freaking dogs, you know?
Oh
They're
yeah,
big
and
compared to the Nelwyn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
the lore behind them is interesting. They're developed by some of the Fae. Like the Death Dogs were initially like, or what the Death Dogs are in Willow is like a bastardized version of this perfect hunting dog these Fae creatures in the world invented or bred. And yeah, and so Bavmorda, very early on into her being a super evil bad lady, started kind of like utilizing them as a weapon, essentially,
Yeah.
part of her army. The Veil folk, that's who invented these.
Yeah, the Veil folk. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're immune to
Yeah, I
steel.
definitely.
Wow, holy shit.
They're what?
They're immune to steel, and
Oh,
yeah, and they have like basically they're kind of like what is it? Komodo dragons. They have like there's like they have their bites can draw blood and are septic and cause a lethal infection, and their spittle burns like acid. That's pretty freaking crazy.
Yeah.
And they're immune to magical wards. That's cool.
yeah.
man,
They definitely.
It's
have
cool
a
for
great-
them. Not cool for the
They have a
Nelwins.
great. Yeah, the Death Dogs. They have a great introduction. You just see them go to just maul the lady who's putting the baby in the river. Like it's a very visceral scene. So
Yeah.
and it works all the much better even all these years later because they're using those practical effects. And so definitely with you guys, and I'd imagine a lot of people hoping to see more practical effects in the upcoming Willow TV show because Jurassic Park did it right. And it's harder, it's more expensive, but it's better.
Yeah.
For some stuff, it's definitely a little bit harder and more expensive. But like Adam's saying, for a lot of stuff now, it's easier. It's cheaper to do mostly physical and then touch-ups in digital, especially for these shows that already have these huge budgets. And I'm not aware of what the sequel series budget is currently, but it is Disney Plus, so I imagine it's got at least a fairly decent budget. Something along the lines
There's
of current programming.
Yeah, there is a certain finesse that you have to take when you're making something that doesn't exist in the real world and you're making it real. Like this is, something out of someone's imagination. This is not real, maybe based on some folklore or, based in reality, but it's entirely a magical creation. And so the best way to make that real is to use real effects, is to use practical effects, to use a dog and then add that death element to it.
Yep.
So, when it comes to the Brownies, Cherlindrea, the Death Dogs, the two-headed dragon thing, these effects look great, or have a real can instill real emotion because people put their time and effort into them. They didn't just click on a few buttons. A lot of times when computer effects are being used, it's because there wasn't forethought. It's just, oh, we'll take care of it in post. You can't do that with practical. It's impossible. You have to put in the work ahead of time and you overcome challenges you hadn't thought of or will come up, just by the nature of filmmaking. So
right.
There's just a natural authenticity. It's just natural because people put in their blood, sweat, and tears. Not to put down anyone who's doing a computer effect, but if you're doing the computer effect, you need more time. you need more post-production time. You overcome those obstacles after filming has already been done. So either way, you've got to have the forethought, and the practical effects force you to overcome those challenges before you've even started recording.
Yeah, and speaking of that forethought and everything, like going back to Darby O'Gill and the Little People, what I learned was like about one of the techniques that they use, matte painting, which is actually pretty cool. Like they would actually physically put a pane of glass in between the camera and whatever they were filming, and then they would have an artist come out and paint on the pane of glass, like the extra things that they wanted to be in the shot, and and match it perfectly with the color of the scenery and everything like that, so that they could build like partial sets and then expand it. And it's cool because like back then, all they were just adding to what already was there, or slightly taking away or coloring over it. And nowadays they can do that without the pane of glass. They just do it with a computer. And I think that's what works the best, like just adding, subtracting a little bit here and there, and not like creating a complete like computer generated visual. You know what I mean?
I doubt Willow will have the funding to do it like The Mandalorian or the Book of Boba Fett, but maybe for like a season finale or something, they'll be able to kind of do that where you get to use the kind of groundbreaking technology that they're using and really, sell the world.
Yeah, that's true. I think they also they'll be able to do a lot in post though, like just adding this, a small shading here or a building there. You know what I mean? Like they'll be able to do a lot in post.
I hope they add to the world too. I'm excited to see more of Mother World and see more of these Fae elements and magic and other creatures, and we just got the tip of the iceberg in the movie.
Yeah, totally.
I keep.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. No, I was You go ahead. No, you do it.
I was just looking into kind of like I have this feeling like I'm not entirely sure, but considering who we know as the cast so far, and considering what we know of the sequel series by Claremont and Lucas, it's definitely possible for them to at least use bits and pieces of that framework as they continue on. So it will be interesting because if they do use elements of that, because well, Cherlindrea very well could make a reappearance, as well as the Brownies. And we might even see Cherlindrea's husband, the Stag Lord, who even in what limited information we do have on him, sounds just wicked awesome. Basically, like the stag god in Princess Mononoke. That's basically the imagery I use, or like the even more like that ethereal like blue stag that you can find in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
That's like kind of the imagery I get for it. And that would be really interesting to see. I mean, they're like the Lord of Beasts in Cherlindrea's Grove, essentially. So, they're like, it just, I mean, there's so much territory you can cover with these characters. And not only that, we didn't see like even the full extent of the creatures that live in that forest, or the world generally. I mean, what we did see was kind of this dystopic version of their world. Everything had gone kind of fuckered in the last, since Bevmorda started her reign. So there's this very real like potential for this much more lush world to kind of for us to start inhabiting with much more of the native denizens that we may have not been able to see in previous incursions into the story. And I mean, Cherlindrea is essentially like an immortal being. Like, she doesn't die. If she dies, which theoretically is possible, she would just be reborn.
Right.
You
Yeah,
know?
because she's an elemental, but also not all, or it's speculated that she's an elemental, but also that she's a high fae.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
so what does that mean?
Well,
That-
we don't have a. I wish we had that source book, because that's basically where that information would be stored.
no, see, I think that a character like that with that kind of power, you don't make a stat block for. You don't write it out. You let the story kind of,
Uh-huh.
tell itself. You don't some that kind of power. Writing it out might be good for a dungeon master just to give you a confident kind of, you have this foundation. You've thought about the character. But if I were running a game and a Cherlindrea type character enters the story, she's not going to have a stat block. There's not going to be numbers written out for what she can do. It's whatever the plot needs or
Right.
whatever the characters need. And if someone's going to attack her, I'm not going to be looking at HP or something. I'm going to be dropping a piano on someone. So
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, just kind of like what we can tell from like pop culture and stuff like that. This archfey, or how do they describe her, Adam?
A high fae.
A high fae. I mean, it's like yeah, it definitely is like one of these things that feels like, almost like a godlike power, the way that Cherlindrea is described in the lore.
exactly.
Truly,
You know,
yeah.
yeah, just like
Yeah, only the most powerful magic can attack her and injure her. And then, yeah, like you said, Weston, even if she did die from that attack, from said attack, then she would just she would be reborn, just drawing from the power of the lives in the forest and whatnot. So speaking of like her being an elemental, what kind of an elemental would you guys speculate she might be? Like air, wind, fire. I feel like I feel like air and fire, like I don't know so much, maybe earth, I don't know. Like what do you guys think? Pure
I mean,
speculation.
I'll let you go first, Weston.
so I've always, I mean, I think it's fairly clear she's like a being of light. It's like the way
Yeah.
that they shoot her and the way that she's moving, like in this ethereal kind of way. The way that she's portrayed is like this being that is constantly emanating light, and that may be her element. Another theory I was thinking about when I was learning about the Stag King was that they're like a duality, that
Okay.
they hold the kind of like, especially everything, their power is kind of centrally located in Cherlindrea's grove.
Mhm.
Their power, Cherlindrea's power can extend outside of her domain, but that is her domain. And I think that if it's like because she's depicted differently than other elementals would be in that world, where they're not necessarily like these verbal humanoid kind of things. There are nature incarnate, essentially. I think
Right.
Cherlindrea is almost like that uh, that border between worlds, kind of like the element of the woods itself, or maybe even the symbol of like um, life or nature. Something more almost like ambiguous. So she's
Yeah.
you know uh, she's
She's
definitely more versatile than an elemental who knows not necessarily uh, doesn't think with a conscience about their elemental role in the world. Isn't worried. A volcano isn't worried when it erupts.
right, yeah.
But Cherlindrea does have that, or seems to have a conscience, especially considering the fact that her giving Willow the wand, her having the Brownies bring Elora Danan into the world, definitely is an indication, at least, that she knows that if Bavmorda completes her ritual, her power is not only going to be threatened, her life could be very well threatened, her ability to exist. If Bavmorda was to attain that level of power,
Right.
we think we talked about it in her episode, but yeah, she would essentially reach that same level of godhood.
Yeah.
I mean, she
Yeah,
was
I think
already immensely powerful.
Well, in her wand, like they actually created the wand to give to Finrazel to fight Bavmorda in that respect, so that wouldn't happen.
Dude, and there's this is this gnarled long stick of wood. It's not necessarily this divine, it doesn't seem like it has that divine quality. It's the same kind of same kind of vibe as the Holy Grail in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Yeah.
That same it's very plain, but holds much power.
I was kind of looking that up and checking things out with that, and I found out that just in general on Earth, wands were used in many different rituals, in ancient days and things like that, including births and wedding ceremonies and all sorts of things like that. But some of the earliest known wands were actually made from hippos' tusks, and they were basically halved and carved so that basically one was straight or more pristine, and the other was gnarled. And so out of each hippo's tusk you would get 2 wands. So I don't know if that represents the good and the evil. There wasn't a whole lot of information about that, but that was just a thing that I found out. It was pretty interesting about that.
Yeah, I definitely think Cherlindrea, I think I have the same opinion as you, Weston. She is part of a duality, but I wasn't aware of the Stag King. So my duality for her was with the Brownies. And Cherlindrea is a spirit of human nature. She's an elemental of order. She is an oracle. So she is kind of that bridge between nature and humanity, between nature and order. If she wasn't there, the Stag King would be isolated, or the Brownies would be chaos, would be
Right.
isolationist,
Right.
would be bestial. And so Cherlindrea is kind of like this reminder that humans are part of nature as well, and humans are animals as well.
Yeah.
And so Cherlindrea, I think, is an elemental of the human spirit, of the conscience, of the soul, of the necessity for balance between civilization and nature. And she kind of represents the order side of things. And the Brownies are the chaos side. They're the chaotic forces of nature, the fickle, the joy and emotional side. And because Cherlindrea is just kind of, she's in the story wise, to me she's like the oracle. She's empowering the hero on his journey, telling them things that they need to hear, so that the reluctant hero is no longer reluctant, giving him the wand. And so for me, to the question of what elemental is Cherlindrea, in direct reference to Dungeons and Dragons, I would make her an alignment elemental. She's an order elemental.
It's almost like she's the wand is a physical embodiment of her, because if a wand is like your magical focus that channels any kind of magic, whether it be chaotic, neutral, lawful, good, whatever, evil, whatever it is, that focus channels it, and so she takes all of everything that's going on around her, the Stag King, the Brownies, the chaos, the sheer power, and channels it in a way that you can accomplish things and stuff like that. That's pretty cool.
Well, that was a good question too.
Yeah. Also, like as you guys were talking about that, I thought about the Cherlindrea and the wand almost being like Arthurian leisure, but yeah, I can't even talk. Arthurian legend, where like she's almost like the Lady in the Lake giving Arthur Excalibur, but she's basically giving Willow. So in this sense, it's less Arthur and more like she's giving Merlin a wand with which to fight the forces of evil and stuff like that.
A young Merlin.
Very young Merlin, yeah.
No, it's interesting. Putting Willow into the role of Merlin as like an Arthurian legend. I think that's actually a really interesting observation. Yeah, man. I like that a lot. I would have yeah, but ultimately if you think of Elora Danan as Arthur, it makes perfect sense.
Totally.
Wow, yeah. Interesting.
That's crazy.
And it's a choice from the writer to not have Cherlindrea give Madmartigan a sword. It's giving the Nelwyn a wand, and I like that choice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Elora Danan chooses,
This is true.
Decides, ultimately. Cherlindrea says, it's like I could have, I could have had anyone do this quest, but fucking Elora Danan chose you, homie. This is on you.
Oh yeah, you know what? That's a fact that I forgot about. It's not like Cherlindrea is choosing Willow.
She spoke to Elora Danan.
Yeah, it's it's definitely like putting if you think about it, she even has like her odd Galadriel moment towards the end of her conversation with Willow in her grove, where she kind of like, gives him a very stern, very serious warning at the end of her very like, she has this Glenda the Good Witch kind of like vibe to her whole performance, and then suddenly she goes hard Galadriel,
Galadriel, yeah.
And I mean it's an interesting character, man. I really love the way that they portrayed her. And like the little pixies that surround her, and they just how they filmed that was really interesting. Where they another really interesting in-camera technique.
Yep.
It's like how do they do it?
I was looking.
Sorry, it's in my notes.
Oh, is it? Okay, yeah, because I looked for it, and I like a long time ago. I was looking at it, and I read it, and I think maybe I saw a video, and then I don't know where I looked, and I tried to look it up again before we had this conversation.
Oh, okay, here it is.
You found it?
She's portrayed by Swedish actress Maria Holve. And they essentially they set the camera to record essentially double speed. So she had her lines memorized in a sped up version of the dialogue. So everything was pantomiming instead of actually delivering dialogue while they were recording her at double speed, so that her movement would look this ethereal way. They're blasting her with light so that she's completely just like what's it called, where you're completely washed out.
Yeah.
And then they project that the footage at 24 frames a second, and everything sounds normal. The movement looks otherworldly. And like I don't know if they had her in a harness or how they accomplished a lot of that. Maybe just were using camera movement to give her that element of movement through the scene using some kind of like a blue screen kind of effect to bring her into the world. But yeah, I wasn't able to find anything conclusive on that. But I love that effect, and it's not really something that I've seen them do for like other kind of like characters like that. I mean, not that there's a lot of characters like Cherlindrea in fiction, especially in film, anyway.
Yeah.
I wonder if in the movie 300, the Zack Snyder film, they have the oracles and they look like they're underwater. They look like they're moving underwater, and that's the only thing I can think of that's kind of similar. And I wonder if they were looking at Willow.
I was thinking about that too, and I know they use that a lot for various like things that are sci-fi that are supposed to happen in space, so that you have that weightless look. But it's interesting in Willow because it has like her movements and even her clothing has that look, but her hair moves normally, which is, I don't know how they got that to work, but it looks awesome. It's really cool the way they did that. Yeah.
Even to this day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Easily one of the more, like effective physical effects in the film, just captivating stuff. And I really hope that we'll see, I think we were talking a little bit about this already, but if they return to a specific kind of effect or character, Cherlindrea, man, I really hope we get, because it looks like this is a kids on an adventure through the woods kind of sequel series. Like,
yeah.
It's a bunch of 20-somethings, and it seems like from a lot of, I mean, any of the footage I've seen so far, it feels very like kids in a woods. So hopefully we get that kind of adventure and we end up in, Cherlindrea's grove at one point. I think that would be really a wonderful thing, especially because I would love to see and I would love to see more brownies, man. I would love to see like
pixies.
Absolutely. Oh man. I would love it if they got tricked by pixies or something like that.
Oh man. And I was in my research, I found out that brownies are supposed to be long lived, and there are no female brownies, apparently. I don't know how they get created, but they didn't say how long lived they are, but they apparently they live for a really long time, and there are no females.
Wait, is this from the Willow lore specifically, or from
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely from the Willow lore. And I'd love to see
wonder he was looking
a reprise of Franjean and Rool.
Man, yeah, I don't think we haven't seen them in any cast list yet, but either way, I think more time has probably passed than that would be realistic. Although they did. No, you're right. You're right. They do live 1,000 years.
Yeah. Oh, is it 1,000 years? Wow.
1,000.
Okay.
But you said something that I didn't realize, or I didn't know, is that
there's no women.
You were saying it right after how long they live.
No wonder he was looking at the cat.
I know, he was looking at the cat. He was looking at like really tall dakinis. Man, Rool was just like horny. He was thirsty.
There's no women.
Especially after being in a vat of beer. Beer! Yep.
It's funny though, because they're it's one of the few things in like the Gaelic lore that is similar, is that the brownies were exclusively male as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Huh. Or almost exclusively. There were, but almost exclusively. Outliers usually, but
I hope in the new series, if they like maybe have to search for Cherlindrea and they find the Stag King instead. They find brownies and
Oh,
pixies delay them, and then you're expecting this nice human spirit, Glinda the Good Witch, and you end up
yeah.
seeing this giant, isolationist, irritable, hates
Oh,
humans. That's the way I'd do it.
that'd be
Oh
hella
yeah,
cool.
like Lord. Yeah, I mean
Like
it definitely is
Bambi's
an interesting
dad
way.
gets revenge.
Or Lord Kodo from Mononoke. There's
Oh, okay.
high potential for
Exactly.
this going totally Mononoke.
Yeah.
Which
And
I'm
you
all
could
for.
comment on, it'd be a good comment on humans destroying the environment. You got the Stag King who's like, why am I going to help you? Like, I would love that.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be so cool.
You had mentioned you were going to be talking about Cherlindrea's magic wand, so I'll definitely have a magic item available for you guys to see, and a little monster stat block for the brownies. I will be using either the Monster Manual or Volo's Guide to Monsters. Volo's Guide to Monsters has a lot more fey creatures that you can kind of base your stat block on. So even if you're not um, looking at the materials that I've presented, you can find some good stuff there. A quickling or a fairy, and just fine tune them to your campaign to be more like the brownies that you see on the screen or even the borrower's film. So, um, you said you had something to say
Yeah.
about the magic wand.
It's not a huge amount, but it was pretty interesting. Like they actually crafted the wand for Finn Rizal to go up against Bev Morta, and it was a thing where once they had crafted it, she had to attune herself to the wand in order to be able to focus her power and use it properly. And there's a chance, like depending on, I don't know what the special criteria is, but depending on what the wizard or sorcerer is using the wand for, to actually hurt the user of the wand as well. And the other cool thing is, like, um, if two or more people try to use the wand at the same time, it's like, fuck you guys, I'm not gonna do shit for you, and I'm gonna hurt you too. So like stuff like that. So it's pretty interesting, and it just kind of goes to show, like they sort of portray that in the film too. Like when Willow
Yeah.
like first gets the wand and he's like playing around with it at the campfire, and it explodes on him, and he's like up in the freaking tree limb, like, oh, uh, hi, Mad Bodigan, how's it going? Like,
Right, he even cuts himself. Finn Rizal tells him to, I think
oh
in a
yeah,
crow form, to cut himself and put it into the wand.
yeah, he has to use his own blood. Yeah,
Yeah,
pretty
it's
crazy.
definitely, yeah, it's got that element of what you put out, you get back.
Yep.
Um, use sparingly, use when necessary, only when in emergencies.
Yeah, it's kind of like the power that you use comes from you, and you may have to rest later. It's very Dungeons and Dragons. Like, honestly, like the more magic you use, the
Yeah,
more exhausted you're gonna get, and you're gonna have to take more long rests than short rests. Really, it's
I
kind
wonder.
that.
I wonder if that's. Oh, sorry.
No, yeah, I was just gonna say that kind of reminds me of, like, I heard this quote from Willow, from something about Willow with the magic of Willow, and it says the magic is the bloodstream of the universe, and then also the practice of magic is the belief in oneself. So there's like a lot
Beautiful.
of that. It comes from you, like whatever power you're using. you may use others' power, but you're going to have to pay something. There, you have to pay a price. You know.
I can almost hear it in Billy Barty's voice. Magic is the bloodstream of the universe.
Which finger?
Oh man.
There's always got to be a cost to that magic. So that's,
Yeah.
it's just good writing, and you can't create something from nothing. It's a universal law. So
Yep.
even magic must adhere to it.
Oh yeah, it's interesting that it does have this D&D kind of element to it. It does sound like it's almost like from the source book itself. Like this is how you're essentially going to have to run this, or else it's just going to be too powerful. You have to nerf it in some way.
Yep.
And it's definitely like one of those things, man. You've developed your own like stats for, or essentially this legendary item for, like, if you were going to run it in a game, Zach.
Yeah, so I'm definitely going to have a little handout that you guys can see of Cherlindrea's magic wand as a magic item that you could use in your game. And what's important about that is if you're building your own campaign, and first of all, if you're a new dungeon master, you don't need to. You just start with a village, and the blacksmith's daughter has been kidnapped. You don't need to build all this. But as you're building your campaign and you're doing your world building, what's going to sell it, what's going to make people want to do a podcast about it, is developing those rules to the world and beliefs that you have about the world around you, in the real world. And so rules like something cannot come from nothing, magic has a cost, those are
Right.
based on real reflections from real writers about technology, about progress, that all of these things have a cost. There's always a high cost to a low price. There's always, and especially in George Lucas material, the easy way is the way of the Sith. It's what hurts more. It's what's more difficult to do.
Right.
Those are universal laws, and those are what make the world real, and those are what make it captivating and interesting for your players or your audience. And if you're going to be writing out your own campaign or doing a Feywild adventure, those are the kind of questions that you need to be asking yourself. Does magic have a cost? How prevalent is it? Who's aware of those costs? What are those costs? And, once you start asking those questions and writing your own Bible for your Feywild adventure or for your campaign, it's fun. It's almost like a character that writes itself. You've got this
Right.
world that writes itself. You have these rules that, we've all seen less well written material where the rules don't matter and the power levels are always increasing and arbitrary, and it's deflating. It feels like it's lost its magic. It's lost that touch. Creating your own rules to your world, your own rules to magic, is just going to be better for you as a writer as well as for the audience or players, whatever it's going to be. And when you start writing those big ideas, when you start answering those questions, then you start writing characters that reflect those. Cherlindrea and the Stag King, the Brownies. These are themes of chaos and order and fate and nature, and what role that they play with civilization. And if you have done the world building in your own head or written it down, all this stuff just really writes itself. And if you've got your players' backgrounds in front of you, then you can make it interesting for them by applying these to the NPCs that they have in their background, a rival, a family member, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Doing your own Willow campaign or your own Feywild campaign, it can be a bit daunting because of the descriptions or lack thereof in the Dungeon Master's Guide or in the Monster Manual, because there's a lot of lore there, but there's not necessarily a lot of direction. And so it can be somewhat daunting to have such a blank canvas. Limit inspires creativity. So when you put your own limits on magic and how it works and specific locations and history of how a place came to be, like Cherlindrea's Grove, that's a whole entry in your Bible alone as to how it began, where it is now, what changes has that place seen, what was it like before the Brownies showed up. And once you establish that lore and you are creating your NPCs, they have that knowledge in their mind, and that gives them depth. Raul and Franjean can interact with your player characters and talk about before they showed up. I would love to play a game where Stucky is doing his Brownies voices and explaining all this lore to the characters.
That would be fun. That would be hella fun. I would definitely be up for that.
So if you're going to be a dungeon master who you're writing a leg of your campaign that takes place in the Feywild, or if you're writing a whole campaign based on the Feywild, then it's really just a matter of picking and choosing what's going to work for the rules that you've set and the backgrounds of the player characters. And I can't necessarily tell you what that's going to be. I can't give a whole lot of tips or advice on that. It's something that you really just have to work at with your world building. And the more you do that, the more you'll have an idea of how you want to make it your own and what you want to focus on. And I'm definitely going to have a Stag King Spirit of Nature in my next Feywild game.
Yeah. I liked how you like earlier you had mentioned, like a character like Cherlindrea or even the Stag King or anything like that being like such an unknown but also so powerful that you can't necessarily put a set of stats to that character if you're using it in a game, because as the party grows, they're going to discover new things about that character and what they can do with them, for them, and to them. And so it's kind of cool. Like, it's an evolving story in and of itself, like that world building of that character, the really powerful ones that are going to affect them.
Yeah, if your player characters kill Cherlindrea, you can just reincarnate her later as something that you want that's even cooler. So
it reminds me of, sorry to interrupt, it reminds me of an episode of Harmon Quest. Not a sponsor. I don't know if you've watched it, but it's pretty funny. The one where in the Dorist of Fours, and they with Thomas Middleditch, and the forest spirit comes back as like various different things because it's just so stupid, but also funny and fun, and like I see it as that kind of a character, but like magnified for a more serious sort of, but also could be funny, depending on the kind of campaign you want to do,
Yeah, who's to say that you have to have separate avatars for order and chaos? Maybe you're gonna take Cherlindrea and the Brownies and the Stag King and just make one character that gets to move from and shift from whichever theme they're gonna be representing.
Yeah, totally. That's fun.
Like you were talking about maybe Cherlindrea as an elemental. Maybe you're the Cherlindrea in your campaign shifts from air to fire to water to earth and is
Right.
always changing.
Yeah. Fire is definitely like the Galadriel character.
Yeah, and it would be one of those things you kind of telegraph to your players, like, this is, an ally. Don't fight this. And if they make the mistake that's when you get to go God mode on them.
No, that
Which,
doesn't work.
it's kind of an opportunity I imagine a DM would relish.
Oh yeah.
No, the more, in my experience, the more you telegraph that it's a good guy, the more they don't trust them. maybe I've been to had too many betrayals or something in my games, but I feel like the more I telegraph that someone's a good guy, usually the more not flack, but the more like back talk, the more backlash. There we go. The more backlash you're gonna get. And you know what? Sometimes, most of the time, you just got to give the players what they want. So, you're running the game, you can snap your finger and change your Cherlindrea character into something more devious.
Right. Vengeful.
That's the whole reason you don't put a stat block on a character in your game that has that kind of ability to change the story, is so that you can make decisions that fit the moment, because you never know what the player characters are going to do. And so the less you define the stat block on that character, the more you're going to be able to do with the story, serve the story, and serve the player characters.
Yeah, and like a lot of this stuff is just like playing with really fun archetypes. I mean, it's really what one of Lucas's strength is, being able to kind of like find those archetypes and put a new spin on it. And how Franjean and Rool have that their own like duality to them, where the comedic duo we were talking about, and how they're so often used as a literary device to not just move the story along, but also relieve tension and a lot of like wonderful moments, especially in Willow, where like if like Franjean and Rool basically break them out of their cell.
Oh yeah.
They would have been so screwed without Franjean and Rool. Franjean and Rool's tiny little feet carry them all the way ass up a mountain, following after Madmartigan and Willow and Elora Danon.
Yep.
Yeah. It's
it's very 3PO and R2.
And they're
like you
only
said.
Exactly, it's like it's a certain amount of loyalty, but in their own words, well, we could go home, or we could follow them. Well, this is more fun.
Yep.
I would rather go follow them.
Well, and that's the thing, like in the lore about brownies, other than like no females and whatnot, like they say that they like the things they like the most is to have fun and do mischief, and so that's like that's right up their alley. They just want to have fun, do mischief, and Willow and Madmartigan look like they're totally fun and mischief, so of course they're gonna go hang out with them. And I think they have, like they gain that loyalty along the way, as they make friends, whether they want to admit it or not, but they do. And they're actually pretty fierce little fuckers. And yeah,
they stick around all the way through the narrative, man. I mean, they're not afraid of shit. I mean, even during the big final battle, they're fighting alongside and ready to friggin' go, man.
I think a lot of what makes them work is because there's two of them, because you can play that, where they're talking about what's more fun. That's how you convey that they're chaotic, that they're in it for the lulz. So if you just have one, that you don't get to convey that. It would just be an inner dialogue. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It would just be an inner dialogue that's, missed in that cinematic language, or can be so much more difficult to do if you don't just have another character for them to banter with and, convey what their goals are and what their morality is.
Yeah, and especially like that role of comedic relief as a tension kind of breaker in these kinds of movies is really important. I mean, I think, yeah,
Yeah.
we've talked about it before, but like having it be one of these things that a kid watching the movie can latch onto, and like, in these moments
Oh, yeah.
that Willow and Mad Mardigan have just been captured, and we need an aside so that this harsh moment can be kind of uplifted a little bit by this
Yeah.
bit of humor, and I mean, they've got big goblin energy. I really love them for it too.
Yeah. Well, and
That's
the other
true.
thing is, like, not only is it just like a little bit of levity, but it's also like it's practical too, because like they get them, they undo the lock. They do it, like they do various things that help them along, and it's not just for levity's sake, which is cool.
Right. I think Rule takes his job a lot less seriously than Franjean, but Franjean's definitely on top of shit, or at least
Yeah.
he pretends that he's like. I mean, a lot of the time, Franjean just feels like he thinks he's in control of this group, like
Right.
he's in charge.
He's the leader.
Exactly. And I love the delusion there. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And he is in a way. I mean, Cherlindrea has tasked him with this quest essentially. I mean, this is just as much Franjean and Rule's movie as anybody's. Rule is not super interested in being a part of the movie. He's just there for the laws, like you said. He's there to cause fucking damage and raise hell, and it's why I love little rat faced bastards.
Does Franjean have BDE?
No, it's. I mean, I think Goblin Energy and BDE are very distinct and separate.
Okay.
And I do not think there is an overlap in Franjean's case.
Okay.
Although that's just because I hadn't thought about Franjean in terms of BDE. I don't. I mean, I don't think we need to get into my thoughts on BDE and everyone in this cast, because that's what I was doing mentally.
True. Sorry.
No, but thank you for bringing it up. I'll never stop thinking about that, Adam.
Sorry.
I'm blushing. I can feel me blushing.
Oh.
Well, I'll be on Google later.
Oh,
I guess
great.
we don't censor this podcast. It's big dick energy. Why?
Yeah.
We don't need to beat
thank
around that bush.
Well,
Although
you
I
can beat
certainly would.
Oh shoot.
But yeah,
So
no, I
the
think
stag
that
please. No, please go.
so. No, Zach. No, but Franjean and Rule taking an active part in the quest is all a part of the grand destiny. It's like the Fellowship of the Ring, man. Like you couldn't have, if any one piece is missing, everything kind of falls apart.
Absolutely.
Man, that scenario where Willow and Migosh head home though is still kind of playing out in my head.
Uh-huh.
The Rule and Frangian movie.
Yeah, even if we did like, even if you took like two separate stories, like separated by distance and whatnot, kind of vibe, like it would just be wonderful having this slice of life with Migosh and Willow, where they just go home and tend to the farm, and maybe like, they do like, they put soap in a sock or something and mollywop Burgle Cut while he's asleep or something. I don't know.
They do a code red with Burgle Cut.
I mean,
You can't handle the truth, Burgle Cut.
I don't know what else you have to do with Burgle Cut. I mean, that's honestly a whole episode I want to talk about.
How the hell did he become prefect is my question.
Oh, so much more than that.
Yeah.
The same way everyone gains power. Most people.
Yeah.
Exploiting others.
There's a lot of people like
I think Rool and Franjean, I think that might be a good like one shot of like a what if kind of
absolutely
one shot, you know? What if
Yeah.
it was their turn to take a Loredan and your player characters, you know, you can do like a one shot. What if these fairies or what if these satyrs were stuck with saving the world? Like, I think players would get a real kick out of getting to play such goblin-y, chaotic characters that are Cherlindrea is like just out of options.
That would be awesome. That would be so fun.
I mean, this is just basically our current campaign, Zach.
That's true.
Yeah. Everyone has chaotic in their alignment somewhere.
Yeah.
But I do love it as like this like Marvel what if one shot that's just like I mean, it's basically just like the argument in Lord of the Rings of why didn't they just fly the eagles there? Because literally Franjean could be on top of his eagle, Rool hanging onto the tail feathers, and Laura Danon's like in her cool little tote, you know, in the talons, like flying around like
the eagle.
And I guess, I mean, what would they even do? Just go hide? I mean, essentially that's the only option at that point. They're not going to go defeat Bavmorda. I mean, I guess
just somehow go raise her.
They could take the eagle to Fin Raziel, maybe deliver the wand as well, and Fin Raziel and the Brownies would have to raise Elora Danon so that she could be powerful enough to someday take out Bavmorda.
Right, yeah. Ooh,
actually,
that'd
I'm
be
way
interesting.
into that.
That would be cool.
You get Sorsha involved.
Yeah.
Sorsha finds them, but somehow like she's convinced, you know, like maybe Franjean and Rool are like, we'll let you take her, but you have to play a game with us first. And they use some fey fuckery to get her on board.
Right?
She's like binded into a fey contract.
Dude.
What happens to Mad Mardigan? Does he just rot in that cage? Or does
Well, in this narrative, Mad Mardigan was already let out of the cage and had the baby stolen.
That's true. Yeah. You're right.
But I guess in this case, Elora Danon would have just been like, I like these little guys. And like, more than Willow. He pulled me out of a river, but these guys have a sick-ass bird.
That was fun, flying.
So, yeah, Elora Danon chooses them as their protector instead. And they fly to the island and get Fin Raziel, and they just, I don't know, raise her with Fin Raziel as a muskrat.
Yeah, what if
I think in this hypothetical what if, I would swap Sorsha and Mad Mardigan's roles. So now Sorsha's bonded into helping the baby, and Mad Mardigan joins Bavmorda.
Oh
shit!
So brutal.
Oh, the betrayal! That would be insane.
Oh wait!
So then reverse. You just reverse their roles. So Mad Mardigan and Sorsha still fall in love, but Mad Mardigan's working for Bavmorda already.
Yeah.
And Sorsha has to bring him to the light. And Willow's just like, go ahead.
That's how you tie in the deleted scene with the boy and the shark, the boy that turns into a shark. That's how you tie that in. Because, Mad Mardigan would have to, like, fight that thing or something like that.
Right.
Maybe even that's what ends up eating Kale, man.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that? Okay, I remember we talked about
What did you say about a
Ebersis.
kid turning into a shark?
Oh, it's a deleted scene. It's in the comic book and the novelization
Wow.
where when Willow's crossing the lake to get to Fenrizel, there's this little kid that turns into a shark. They spent days
I
on
knew
this
that
shooting.
there was. Yeah, I knew that there was a like fish monster that they had originally wanted to include. I didn't know it was a boy that turned into a shark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, they spent days
Yeah,
on a
throw that
lake
in there.
shooting this shit.
Yep.
It's like I'm pretty sure it was like finished, just maybe even probably edited. I've never seen it though. I've seen bits of it in like featurettes and stuff like that, but I've never seen any of the actual footage.
Yeah, I'd have Mad Mardigan put General Kale in a blender. Get that kale smoothie.
Yeah. I see what you were making a smoothie joke.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is her last name. Okay, so General Kale. Okay, so we talked about Ebersis being Ebert and Siskel, right? We talked about that in an
Right.
episode. Did we talk about Pauline Kael being
What?
General Kale?
Yeah, isn't it? And isn't he General Kale?
Exactly.
Yeah, Kale.
So, like we talked, because one of our early episodes, we talked about how a lot of the potential, there was a potential for its critical kind of like snubbing as being part of why it didn't do super well in that era where, newspaper reviews were a big part of what got people into the theater. And also kind of like wrote the history. But anyway, yeah, it would have been really funny, or it is really funny because like in two of the monsters in the movie, Lucas wrote the names of two of the biggest critics in the country at the time.
Oh yeah, Pauline Kael.
Yeah, and of course
Wow.
Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert.
Ebersisk.
Although the Ebersis was never
so
named
cool.
in the film, I don't know who put it in publicity material that's what it was called, but that's hilarious. I didn't know it was called an
Chef
Ebersis
kiss.
until like, our first episode, I think.
Yeah, same.
I was just like, you mean that turd monster that was like a brain, and then it was like a weird, like big turd snake? I may have actually called it a turd snake at different points in my life. I might have just made that up. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, I thought it was some sort of was it a product of like the trolls or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. It did
Willow
kind of look like
uses
a
his
hairy
wand.
turd.
It was a nasty effect, man. I mean, the water when it falls down off of the bridge into the water gets all like brown and bubbly. It looks real nasty,
Yeah.
and then it's just like starts like like those little they call them snakes. The fireworks thing.
Oh yeah.
It was like it's like that's how it started coming out. It was like this nasty little turd snake.
Yeah,
Turd
it was
snake.
like it was a product of one of the worst like public park restrooms that you could ever think of.
Oh man. Oh man.
And that's Siskel and Ebert. Is what he's saying, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. A two-headed dragon that breathes fire.
Good dragon.
And yeah. Gets murked by Val Kilmer.
Yep. Wow.
Yeah. So George Lucas is pretty based. I just wanted to put that out there. I mean, that it's pretty ballsy. I always admire a ballsy move, and anyone who makes fun of the critics, especially at that point, man. My God.
Yeah, he was pretty on. He was like, "Oh yeah, you panned me. All right, fuck you."
I don't even know what
right away.
What was he even mad about? I don't even remember. It doesn't matter. Like ultimately,
it was a review of. Was it a review of Willow? Like when they did the first screening or something like that? I can't remember.
No.
Probably probably like well, actually, I won't even guess. I'll just look it up later.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I mean, what of Lucas's movies before Willow are you going to criticize? Give me a fucking break. You mean the 5 classic movies that are universally beloved? Yeah, great take, Ebert and Siskel and Kale. I'm sure you had an awesome take on why those movies weren't important, you fucking hacks. Fuck it. Yeah, I can just imagine them hating THX 1138, just like these pompous fucking losers. Anyway,
It was a student film.
all I'm saying is that, it's hard to imagine them having a strong take on any of those that are valid.
Yeah.
Well, I
mean,
hope we
Jar
get to
Jar
see.
hadn't even been invented.
What? You hope?
Jar Jar hadn't even been invented yet, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Misa, so sorry.
He's going to show up. He's going to be in Cherlindrea's grove.
Just in a little under a lily pad and some shit.
Yeah, he's going to do a flip out of the water.
Misa, bomb.
Oh man, that would be so cringe. I mean, I am actually all for. God, I'm all for tying that world together, and I think you could do it easier by some. I've probably talked about this before. The Wicket connection, baby.
Wicket Warwick.
Yeah, because the Ewok movies, the Ewok adventure movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think those
Totally.
are some of the best Star Wars movies, in my opinion. They're my
fun.
favorites, and I think that they match a certain flavor of Willow. Like, they're made during a really similar time, post Star Wars, where fantasy was kind of like something obviously on Lucas's mind that takes shape within the Ewok adventure stories. You have magic in those movies. Not only that, but you have this huge world of different characters, races that you never see again in Star Wars. None of them are canon, but Ewoks are. So I'm just saying. Endor's got a lot of stuff that could potentially tie the two worlds together. I don't know. Just my theory.
I'm with you on that one.
Mother World, Endor, maybe the same thing.
Yeah, it does say a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So for all we know, the natural evolution of Nelwyns were their ancestors were Ewoks.
Oh my god.
Or maybe the Nelwyn and the Brownies were just combined into one people, and that's the Ewoks.
Oh, you were going that way. I was going like Ewoks evolved into Nelwyns. But yeah, that'd be crazy.
Oh, see, I went the opposite on the other.
Yeah, that'd be insane.
No, I was initially thinking of it like Zach, but now I'm on board with you, Adam. I like it more like Willow's world, Mother World, is like post Star Wars Endor. I think that makes way more fucking sense.
Yeah,
it makes sense chronologically.
Like hundreds of thousands of years into the future.
Willow is just the great grandson of Wicket.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense because oh my god, that actually would make more sense because then it's just the Force is instead what do they call the Force in Willow? It's like the Great Awakening, or it's like the magical stream of power that exists in the whole world.
Yeah.
The Great Mystery. The Great Mystery. The Great Mystery is just basically the Force. So I mean, yeah, they are the same thing, if in this hypothesis.
Thematically, they are certainly.
Oh yeah,
100%. And if you, This is simply just like because it's what they were doing for special effects at the time. But the way that the witch lady in the Ewok adventure movies uses her magic, and the way that we see magic portrayed in Willow is almost identical. Obviously, it's just an effects thing, but it does tie my whole aesthetic. It does tie shit together for me aesthetically.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I like that.
And there's tons of humans on Endor. There's all kinds of. I mean, the witch lady. There's what's his name? The old actor with the big mustache. Oh man, I can't remember his character name in that movie, but
the little girl. What's her name? Sindal. That she reminds me of. What's her name? Drew Barrymore as a kid.
Yeah, she's knockoff Drew Barrymore. Yeah, man. I don't know, man. There's also the rest of her dead family. That's right. They all die.
Yep.
That was dark, man. That movie got dark. Like Sindal's family dies, and they're just replaced by this weird rabbit person and old man, and some Ewoks. I forgot. Don't forget the Ewoks. Man.
Oh man.
You know what? I watched a bunch of the Ewok cartoon too, and I don't think they ever brought those characters back in though. There's a lot of weird stuff in that cartoon too, though. It's just like, okay, well, this is in Star Wars in my imagination now. You can't stop me, canon.
Yeah, I watched a little bit. I don't remember much of it, but I watched some of it.
The theme song sounds like it's by this 60s. It's like one of the first underground bands ever. It was like this band called the Fugs. That's like their whole like claim to fame. Mm-hmm. It's kind of tongue in cheek. But they were like friends with like Allen Ginsberg and William Burroughs. They were like beatniks essentially. Yeah, holy they were shit. Just like beatniks that didn't know how to play instruments really. And yeah, they're like a super proto punk band. They like wrote all these really weird songs. A lot of them very aggressive and loud and brash and antagonistic in a lot of ways.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they're great, man, and they sound exactly like the band that does the Ewoks song.
That's funny.
Yeah, it might be a nice little homage if they do something with other Lucas properties, like especially ones that didn't succeed on the level that Star Wars and Indiana Jones did. So putting a little Ewok movie flair into your Willow TV show.
Yeah.
I doubt they will, but I wouldn't mind seeing it.
That would be nice.
I would love it. Just see like, oh man, I think they're going to I mean, I love the idea. Yeah. I love the idea so much that I'm now thinking of reasons that it definitely can't happen, Weston. Be realistic.
Just get all the cameos, get the Franjean and Rool back, get some Ewoks and Jar Jar Binks in there.
All right. Might as well add Mickey Mouse.
Right.
Yeah, going off the rails here.
Yeah. Mickey Mouse is just his little wizard's outfit. Got a bunch of brooms trailing him.
Maybe on a steamboat in the background.
Oh man, you know, I've coming back to Willow and everything. I found a thing that said something about in Galadorn. Darn it, Gala. No, in Galadorn, there was a tavern song. Galadam it. There was a tavern song about Cherlindrea, and it goes like this: leaves in her hair, shade in her eyes, the lolly maiden of the forest she lives free from care, though every man dies, the lolly maiden of the forest. Neath her light dappled branches, I find love that's pure, as the rain and the wind, but she's colder than ice to mankind. Oh, I love the lolly maiden of the forest, which is interesting. So like,
Why
just
isn't
like
that in the movie? That's great.
I know, right? Isn't that cool? I don't know if that was in the novelization, in the source book, or where it was, but like that's freaking awesome. And it kind of sounds like she not only is she an elemental or a high fae, but like it sounds like, you know, like her grove, like there's like she is a tree spirit, like she's some sort of tree spirit, or something like that,
Dryad
Right.
of
It says.
sorts.
like a dryad. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It says in her wiki entry something about her when she reincarnates into the heart of a tree or something like that as well.
Okay.
Only adding to
Yeah.
what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
and that plays into, you know, the archetype. You know, these are all stories that have been told for thousands of years, if not longer.
Yeah.
So they're just you know, it's like that old saying, there's nothing new, it's just your execution. You know, all these stories are good versus evil, order versus chaos. You're just changing the dressing and making it your own.
Totally. And George Lucas was extremely open about that too. You know, he's like he
Mhm.
just talks about like this is the hero's journey. I've drawn deeply from everything from the Iliad to, you know, like the Seven Samurai. You know, like it's the hero's journey. It's a classic tale that you can't, if you do it right, it's going to be amazing, you know?
Precisely.
Yeah, and it'll appeal to just about everybody. You know, everyone can take the hero's journey. It's somewhat. Yeah, take the hero's journey every day, man.
Yeah, man.
Wake up in the morning, you know, hero's journey, go.
I'm going to do that tomorrow when I go to work.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you think about it, yeah.
My hero's journey would be more fun with some Rool and Franjean. So
Yeah. I wish I had Rool and Franjean at work.
You just gotta. I mean, you just gotta take a page out of Hamlet's book and just do them in your head.
Yeah.
Oh, who says I don't?
There you go.
It's a lot healthier than it sounds, I swear.
I am alone for the most part at work, so that's fine.
Yeah, dude,
No.
actually that's the best. Being alone at work, that means you just get to like scream along to music and like wait, are you like in front of customers? I know you work at the post office. But...
No, I deliver the mail, so I have to. The only thing that I couldn't do is like, I mean, I'm by myself basically. I don't really run into people very often, but I have to focus on the task at hand. So I don't know if Hamlet would be a good idea for.
Yeah, just delivering entire, you know, pages of dialogue to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would, if I was doing that, I would definitely be writing down the names that I like and using them in the campaigns and character creation.
Right.
Oh, that's a great name.
Oh, dude. Yeah, that was the best part about working at Toyota. I would just walk around and like think of new lyrics for songs and let my mind wander and like, you know, like run lines of dialogue and stuff like that, just like trying to get off book for this play or whatnot. And it's like, you know, a lot of time to spend by yourself. Being alone on the job, man, that's the luxury most of us don't have, you know? Once you lose it, it's like, oh, I'm back.
Writing songs called Mad Mardigan.
Yeah. Very true. Very true.
Mad Mardigan. I'm gonna write a song called Blackroot.
That's actually
Yeah.
that sounds like a jam, dude. Yeah, I would
What's that?
definitely listen to that though. I mean, like for real.
Blackroot.
So get working on it.
Sounds good.
I mean, really, you could make a whole album out of songs just based on the world of Willow. I think that's a concept album we work on together, guys.
Yeah, we should do that just to aid to the podcast, I think.
Oh my god, I'm so into that.
We could do it like
Well,
say what?
we've created all this 5e material. I think a one shot is the culmination. It's just what we're building to, whether we realized it or not.
That's
Oh,
true.
sure. We got the one shot, and then we're gonna be have more than enough to talk about once the show premieres. You know, we don't even have a release date yet, so might be holding on to our hats for that for a minute. But I think it is it is in pre-production, or it is in production. So I'll check my IMDb Pro to confirm that. But
there was another little blurb that I read about magic in the world of Willow, and it said magical spoken word is an appeal to invisible deities, demons, and other ethereal entities. That sounds crazy. So it not only is like it's the power of you, and the belief in oneself. You have the power, but also you're like basically, I guess basically a witch or a warlock, or using other spirits and things like that to further your ends and things like that, depending on like whether you're on the good, neutral, or evil scale of that. That sounds really interesting and strange.
Kind of beseeching a higher power or higher powers.
Right.
And depending on who you are and what you're trying to accomplish determines who's going to answer, and good, evil, or otherwise.
oh yeah, even think about how they each character who wields magic in the film uses a different kind of way of speaking. Like Willow has this almost like, he's still learning. It's very studious and like trying to remember the words. It's a little bit forced, but when you watch Morta and Finn Rizal do it, I mean, Finn Rizal is like having the best time. Just like shouting the most random series of musical noises that you can imagine. And Morta is like this very powerful, very short kind of like delivery for each of her magical words. And it's like kind of almost implying like different energies at play, who they're calling to, and that kind of thing. It's one of I love that about this movie.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that sort of plays into the belief of oneself. Like it also like
right.
I had read that it had like an effect of like basically you learn some magical things. Once you learn a magical thing in a certain discipline, it's easy for you to learn other things within that discipline. And then as you go along, your language that you use, I mean, there is a magical language, but also you kind of develop your own within that. And you at times you don't even, it kind of reminds me of Harry Potter. Like, like at first you learn the words and the actions, and then you do it. And then eventually, once you get to like, what is it, 5th, 6th year, you learn how to do the spells just by thinking the words. And then eventually you can just do the spells without saying anything and using them because you've gotten that repetition and you've developed your own style with whatever thing you're, entity, being, and yourself that you're calling upon.
There's even D&D equivalents of that kind of thing too, right?
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, even like on a flavor level, there's like, I have the bard that paints instead of plays music. stuff like that. Like there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of provide that, but there's also like literally as written, I'm pretty sure some of the like somatic or spoken components or some of that for higher level spells or higher level characters. Can't remember any of the details here because I'm not great at reading all those books and I don't usually play Magic spellcasters, but yeah, there's like feats and stuff like that that make certain elements of spellcasting easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the older editions of Dungeons and Dragons, the meta magic were feats that any spellcaster could learn. And in the 5th edition, they made it particular to the sorcerer. Like sorcerer and wizard really kind of changed quite a bit between 3rd, 4th, and 5th edition.
Yeah.
And so the sorcerer meta magics, there is one that you can get that lets you ignore the verbal component of spells, I believe. So you can, any spell that requires you to speak, you can just use hand motions instead. So you can be a very stealthy mage. And in older editions of Dungeons and Dragons, that was available to more spellcasters. So, there's definitely an archetype and a precedent, there.
Yeah, that's because the natural magic or fount of magic in a sorcerer is slightly different than the like a wizard learning from spell books, even though they may have natural magic, right? Is that true?
Yeah, I think the meta magic they retconned into the sorcerer as being something that, because you're born with this magic, you learn to bend the rules. You learn to cast 2 spells in one turn. You learn to turn your spell slots into sorcery points or sorcery points into spell slots. So
Right,
they kind of leaned into that. And in previous editions, it was like the wizard and the sorcerer were kind of swapped. The sorcerer, because you were naturally magic, you weren't limited by schools of magic. You could learn the most spells because you didn't have to do the studying. And so when they did 5th edition, they kind of swapped that the wizard can learn the most amount of spells and just add them to your book. And the sorcerer doesn't learn as many different types of spells, but what you can do with those spells, the wizard can't.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah. So would you say Finn Rizal is more of a sorcerer or a wizard or something else?
Some of that becomes semantics, like especially if it's an NPC. If you're the GM and you're creating an NPC, it's called the player's handbook. It's not the GM's handbook.
Right.
You can do whatever the hell you want, but for a player character, putting those limitations lets you, create a character that will fit into those rules and that world better. But sometimes they can actually make it harder to play out a character concept that you want to do. It's definitely like an ongoing Dungeons and Dragons debate. Is Harry Potter a wizard or a sorcerer? Is Willow a bard or a wizard?
Right.
That's why I did 2 character sheets for him. And one of them's not even a traditional spellcaster. It's I think what they call a quarter spellcaster. They don't get the 9th level spells. They get super low level spells. The arcane trickster is the rogue that learns spells. Within 5th edition, they have the quarter casters, which are like fighters and rogues that you pick up a subclass that teaches you magic. And there's third casters, which are your paladins and your rangers, and they are, you get spell casting at 1st or 2nd level, I think, and it's not particular to your subclass. And then there's half casters, which I think the warlock is the half caster. I forget. Oh, I don't think there is a half caster. caster, actually. They don't have, a perfect split. You can't play a 50-50 because it steps on too many toes of other classes. So they have third casters, quarter casters, and full casters. And the bard is a full caster, the wizard, the sorcerer. And so if you're going to be playing a spellcaster, there's plenty of options in the player's handbook, but they might limit your character concept or your ideas about whether Willow is a wizard or a sorcerer or a bard. If it's an NPC, you can make them all. You can give them a little bit of everything.
Gotcha. That's cool. I was just gonna say, I think it's about time for us to wrap up now. I had a lot of fun talking about all the different aspects of the magic and magical people within the world, Cherlindrea and the Brownies and everything like that. And I'm sure you guys did too, huh?
Yeah, man, that was a blast.
Yeah, Stag King is going to show up in a future game, or in a future game of mine anyways. If you're listening, we of course very much appreciate you sticking around. And if you want to use Cherlindrea's magic wand or a brownie in your game, you can find those on our nerdcrafty.com website, where we post all of our character sheets and art and things that we're doing. And you can find me on there under the artist section if you're interested in seeing some art or even commissioning a game. We've got our Iron Hearts bi-weekly on Sundays, and we've got the drag game that the three of us are in that's going to be on the website as you're listening to this, already up there, and it is so great. You can just watch it at your leisure. We, of course, have the Nerdcrafty YouTube channel, so if you want to check that out, Nerdcrafty LV on Twitch.
Yeah, we've got a lot of stuff coming out. Please give it a look. We would love your any notes that you want to give us on what we're doing. We're you can tell we've only got a few episodes out of this so far, and we'd love any feedback you have to offer us.
Yeah, feedback can be sent to ignorethebird@nerdcrafty.com.
All right, thanks, guys. That was fun.
I'm Captain Zach.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Weston.
And we'll see you next time on Ignore the Bird, Follow the River.
This has been a Nerdcrafty podcast.